Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Soccer Sofa, hosted by myself, the Stud.
And me, the horse.
This week we've got a cultured ball-playing centre half who's amassed nearly 400 top-flight appearances in both the Scottish Premier and the Premier League. Add on to that Champions League appearances, FA Cup appearances, never mind the 55 caps for his country that makes him into a Scotland Hall of Famer. Ladies and gentlemen, roll VT!
Paul Hartley tries again, and Weir tries again, and it's been turned in by Gary Caldwell. Scotland stun France, and Hampden is roaring like it has never roared before. Well, they've had to weather a bit of a storm from France, but Hartley swung it in, Weir flung himself at it, and Gary Caldwell poked it in.
And on the sofa today, Gary Caldwell. How you doing, Gary?
Hi, how you doing? I'm great.
How's lockdown treating you?
It's challenging for everyone, but thankfully the family are safe. But homeschooling with 3 kids has definitely been a challenge. But like everyone, we've had to adapt. We've had to kind of learn new skills, and hopefully we all come out of it having learned something, and the world can be a better place for it.
That's the master plan, and we thank you so much for taking the time out of homeschooling to give us a good interview today. So thank you very much for coming on.
Gary, a good point to start on this topic of homeschooling is what were you like at school as a school child? Were you good in the classroom?
Yeah, I was. I tell the kids that all the time. I says school's the best time of your life, and they tell me I'm being silly and kind of laugh at me. But I say honestly, it is. When I look back, I love my time at school. I worked extremely hard. I left after standard grades because of my opportunity with football. But if not, I'd have went on to hires and probably further education as well. But I really enjoyed my time at school.
And I imagine sport played a big part in that. Were you in the school, well, obviously school football team, were you a cricketer or a hockey player as well?
No, I was in a few sports. We didn't actually have a school team, and me and my big brother kept kind of pestering the PE teacher, and it was the science teacher, to get a school team, and they done tryouts for the team, little kind of a couple of games between some players, pupils within the school, and then we got a team together, and we actually done quite well. We had myself, my big brother, and Paul McHale, who went on to play professionally as well. So we had quite a good school team, and I went in different things as well. Played in the golf team one day, mainly just to get a wee trip away on a day trip out of school, and the cross country, but mainly football. That was always my passion from a really young age.
And of course, I think in your younger days, you were part of the Celtic boys, and is it Hutchison Vale was your junior side?
Yeah, my main junior side was Bannockburn. It was run by my dad and my uncle, really. He ran my main junior side. And when I was young, I really went to, once I got to a level that other clubs were looking, I went to all different clubs in Scotland. Hearts were the first club through a scout called Scott Gibson, got us to Hearts. And he actually eventually became the Newcastle scout, and that was a link that took my brother and myself to Newcastle. But played for Celtic, played for Rangers, and then when I was about 13, 14, I mainly went to Celtic and Scotland, but then, like I said, at 16 left school and went to Newcastle.
And as a 16-year-old, well, leaving home and going to Newcastle, what's that like? Who are you living with? Who's looking after you?
Well, I actually, before that, I used to go on a Friday. Me and Brian Kerr, who was my assistant manager at Partick Thistle, we used to get the train down straight from school on a Friday, the both of us. And when I think back now, I don't know how we done it. I'd have been 15, we were both 15. So my mum would put me on the train at Stirling, he'd get on at Motherwell, and then I'd meet him in Edinburgh, and both of us would go down in the train, stay over on the Friday night, play for the youth team on the Saturday and come back up on the train on the Saturday, or if there was school holidays, we'd stay down for the week and train. But when I think of my son, my oldest son's 13, and to think in a few years of putting him on a train to go that distance, I don't know how I done it, but it was a fantastic education, and I had to learn different things. And then going to Newcastle as a 16-year-old, we lived with a landlady for a while, me and Brian, who looked after us and cooked for us and cleaned for us and done everything. She was amazing. And we eventually moved out and got our own house and stayed together. But it was a brilliant time looking back, being young, playing football every day with your mates, and learning was a fantastic time.
Yeah, I mean, that Newcastle side that you were, I imagine you were starting to get a little bit closer to first team training. There's some pretty big names around. I think there was Ian Rush there at the time, John Barnes, Stuart Pearce. What were those guys like being around the place? Yeah,
they were amazing professionals. They were there when I first went there under Kenny Dalglish. Fantastic professionals who had an amazing career, and we got to see them from kind of afar. And then when Ruud Gullit became manager, he done a lot of training where we would actually play against the first team, the reserves would play against the first team. So I was coming up against Duncan Ferguson and Alan Shearer, every day, which for a young boy, that sort of player and education was brilliant for me. I mean, every day they would elbow you, they would be physical, and they'd try and bully you, and it was brilliant for me to learn that I have to be physical to be a centre half. And they were all fantastic pros, but greatly young players as well, passing on advice. Alan Shearer, Gary Speed, Warren Barton, Rob Lee were brilliant for giving you that advice.
Yes, yeah, I can imagine. That kind of era, though, times had moved on from you having to do small jobs around the club, I imagine. So it was the technical development back then.
Yeah, I was actually the first. My big brother done a lot more jobs, and I was probably the first batch of academy players that the jobs became less. We still had to do boots and the odd pair of boots. It wasn't as kind of regimented as it was before. We looked after equipment and stuff, but I think that's something personally that the game misses. I think that education on doing those jobs and the kind of the values and the respect that the jobs give you, I think that's missed, and the new academy system probably loses a bit of that education side, and probably younger players are given too much too early nowadays.
And you talk about your time at Newcastle. You obviously started to impress, and the training was working because you started at a young age with a few loan moves to start getting some career experience. What was it like with your first loan move to Darlington?
Yeah, I was on the bench under Ruud Gullit twice without ever really thinking I was ever going to go on. I was 17-year-old, and it was looking back, it was to fill a place in the bench, but still a brilliant experience. And I was very eager, having played a few reserve games, I was eager to get out on loan. And again, I think that's something that younger players nowadays should do more. I got released from Newcastle at 20, having played over 100 league games, and none of them for Newcastle. So that was a big thing for me, that when I got released, I was a first team player, whereas nowadays some players get released having never played any sort of professional football. They've just played academy football, and it's difficult for them to get clubs. So I was keen to go on loan. My first one was the biggest eye-opener of my life. I was 17-year-old. The loan got agreed on the Tuesday morning, and we had a game on the Tuesday night at home, Darlington. I can't remember who it was against. But I was told just to turn up at the stadium at, I think it was about 6:30 for a 7:45 kickoff. So I was 17, walked into a stadium with my boots and my shin guards in this changing room with men, with 35-year-old men, 30-year-old men who had families, mortgages, and I was just this young kind of whippersnapper coming from Newcastle. And I remember them all kind of looking, going, "Who's this guy?" Then the manager, Tommy Taylor, he was a Londoner. He named the team. I was in the team. and I just loved the experience of playing in the crowd, and it was brilliant. But I remember the first incident in the game, the ball came up, and I ran the centre forward under the ball, brought it down on my chest. Played a little disguise pass into the midfielder, and he got absolutely clattered from the other midfielder, and they actually counter-attacked and nearly scored. And the manager was screaming at me, shouting, get rid of it. And I'm thinking, it's not my fault, it's the midfielder's fault who couldn't receive the ball. But anyway, he took me after the game on the Friday before the Saturday game and said to me, when you get the ball now, he said, all I want you to do is kick it in the channel. And he said, every time you get it, put it there. And I said, what if there's nobody there? And he says, don't worry, somebody will be running there. So it was a different education of what I was used to at Newcastle, from playing out to the back and passing. But it taught me so many lessons on, how physical and how brutal, professional football is. And I had to kind of be ready for that and grow up for that. And I really enjoyed it. I played 4 games, stayed for a month, and I loved it. But it was all I needed really to kind of set me off and show me that football was about more than just passing and looking nice. If you wanted to be a footballer, you had to be prepared for the kind of the ugly side of the game, which that definitely taught me.
It's funny you say that, because throughout the rest of your career, you worked with managers who wanted you to be a ball-playing centre-half. So do you think that's just a lower down the leagues thing, the old put it in the channels?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's becoming less and less, but yeah, definitely at that time, I always ended up in teams that wanted to play for the back, and managers who wanted to pass the ball, because I think that was one of my strengths. But that education that the Darlington and League Two gave me was brilliant, because no matter what level, whether it's Champions League or League Two, you have to win the battle as well. And Darlington taught me that if you can't dominate your centre forward and win that battle, then no matter how good a passer you are, you ain't going to be a good centre half. So it was a really important lesson that I learned there.
And that set you up nicely, because obviously you impressed, and then you made a short loan up to Hibernian, for the first time.
Yeah, that was brilliant. That was under Frank Sosie, who was the manager. Again, a fantastic footballer, but somebody who wanted his teams to play and express themselves. So they were in a difficult situation. They were down the bottom of the league, and the connection was actually Donald Park, who was the coach at the time, the assistant manager. And I had worked with Donald with the underage Scotland groups at under 15 and under 16, and that was where the link came. But I remember Frank, the first time I met him, he said, he made you feel so special. He was like, we're delighted you're here. We're so happy we got you. And I just want you to enjoy yourself and play football. And we were sitting second bottom of the league at the time. And it was brilliant to have a manager to give you that confidence and have that belief in you to go and play. And it was just unfortunate that he didn't get the time to really build something at Hibs, because I think he could have built something special. But we managed to stay up, but he didn't last till the end of the season.
I mean, you're 18, 19 years of age at this point, and you've played under Sousa, Dalglish, Hullert. There's some unbelievable managers there. And then all of a sudden, as a youngster, you then get called up by another great manager, Bertie, to go and play for Scotland.
Yeah, I remember kind of going on loan, and I was doing quite well individually at that time, and there was a lot of talk. Bertie Vogts was coming in and was going to change the setup of Scotland and put a lot of younger players in his squad, and I was potentially one of the players. But to get picked in the squad was unbelievable feeling, and just to be a part of that squad was amazing. But to actually play in Paris was a night I'll never forget for so many different reasons. Obviously, your first cap being so important, but to play against a team of that quality and that standard, and that the eye opener it gave me as a player to show me how far off I was where I wanted to try and get to was amazing. And obviously, you never want to lose a game 5-0. It's humiliating. It's disappointing to lose any game. But to lose to those players and the way that they played was kind of, I don't think there was any kind of negativity from that. They were world class players, and they taught me, you know, that I had a lot of work to do if I wanted to kind of compete at that level in my career.
Just to put it into perspective, yes, it was a 5-0 loss, but I mean, you're playing up against Thierry Henry, Patrick Vieira, Emmanuel Petit, Zidane. It's an unbelievable team, isn't it? So you're a young lad, and you're looking at these players playing opposite you. Did you get to meet these players and have a chat with any of them?
No, you don't really. When you're playing, you're just in kind of autopilot. You're just focused on the game. I kept my own strip. The Scotland strip was more valuable to me than any French strip, my first Scotland strip, so I kept my own strip. And like I said, it was a night that, you know, I'll never forget, because obviously my debut, but playing against those players was special, and it was a lesson on how you play football, because the names you just mentioned were world class players. And I think quite often you say, oh, he's world class, but those players were all World Cup winners. A lot of them have won Champions Leagues and, you know, Ballon d'Ors and trophies like that. So they were really the best group of players that I think I came up against in my career.
And you know what? Regardless of the score, I think it's fair to say you got your own back in 2006.
Yeah, well, that was a bit of kind of retribution in a game that mattered as well. The friendlies, Scotland were never great at friendlies. We only turned up when it mattered. So that game was amazing, because it was that same team really, who were just kind of coming at the end of their peak. Most of them, Zidane had left and Deschamps had left, so others had left. But the Vieiras and that were getting on a bit as well. And it was a brilliant day at Hampden. Walter Smith's tactics were amazing. I've never played a game where everything the manager said would happen happened, and he called it perfectly, and it was a brilliant day for the whole country.
Wish Walter Smith had brought those perfect tactics to Everton. That's all I'm saying. So just to put that into perspective for anyone who doesn't know out there, so as that corner came in, Davy Weir goes up for the ball. Did you think Weir was going to get it, or were you just ready?
No, well, like I said, Walter had, you know, defensively we were obviously very strong. I mean, I think that day we must have had about 6 centre halves on the pitch and about 8 defenders.
That sounds like Walter Smith.
The team was like, we played 5 at the back, 4 in midfield, and Faddy up on his own, just kind of the lost cause to chase it and try and get us up the pitch. But he said first half would be massive to get in at 0-0. We would have to ride our luck, which we did. I think we hit the post. Kay Gordon made a couple of good saves. But we did win the game, and as the first half went on, you could sense their frustration. In second half, we actually played quite well. We grew into the game more and got, I think, the goal came after a couple of corners, 2 or 3 corners in a row. We had a bit of sustained pressure, and it was a fantastic delivery. We had big physical players that could go and attack it, which they didn't really like. And I think it was Eric Abidal was marking me, and I managed to just get in front of him. And I call it a half volley from 20 yards, but it was more like a slide tackle from about 8. So however you score, I think for your country, it doesn't matter. As long as it hits the net, it's an incredible feeling.
And have you still got that shirt and cap?
Yeah, I've got that shirt framed. Actually, my son's got that shirt in his room. I've still got the cap. I've still actually got the boots. And that's funny. One of my friends I was wearing World Cup boots, the old kind of Adidas black boots, and it was at a time where white and coloured boots were everyone was wearing them. And I actually wore white Predators at that time, but I had a problem with my heel for a number of months going in before the game. And World Cups were the softest boot that I could get in the heel, and I could cut the heel, which kind of took away the pressure off the back of my heel. So that was why I was wearing World Cups, but I've still got the boots as well somewhere in the garage. So fantastic memories.
Maybe if you'd worn the white boots, it would have been that 20-yard or half volley. That's what they say.
Yeah, no, the World Cups were reliable boots.
Fair play. We digress. So let's go back to Coventry then in 2002. This was arguably your most successful loan move. And who's your manager down there?
It was Gary McAllister was player manager at the time, and Eric Black was his coach, so the Scottish connection. And I'd signed a new contract for Newcastle, but with a loan. The first year was a loan. They wanted to send me out a loan for a full season. So I managed to go to Coventry in the Championship, which was a very demanding league, still is a very demanding league. 46 league games, a real physical test, and I really loved my time there. We actually started the season really well, and then Coventry went into financial difficulties probably about that time, and we struggled second half of the season. We sold some of our better players. The squad became a bit thin, and second half of the season we struggled, but it was another step forward in my education and my learning.
And then there was another little brief stint, and I actually watched an interview that you did where you say your brief time at Derby County wasn't really, you didn't really feel it, or you don't think it was the best part of your career. What happened?
No, I was poor. I had some injuries at the end of the season, and then I went into pre-season probably not as fit as I could have been. Then carried that into the start of the season. A bit kind of, having been on loan and then not being involved in Newcastle, I probably let things get to my head as well, where I wasn't really as focused as I should have been. And then the loan came about and I wasn't prepared. And again, that was a lesson for me that no matter what is going on, you have to be ready, physically and mentally ready for anything, because you never know what is round the corner in football. And at that point, I wasn't physically or mentally ready. Went to Derby, didn't play as well as I could have played, ended up out the team, and ended up kind of, my loan finished and they didn't want to kind of prolong that and make it a longer loan, so they sent me back to Newcastle, and that was an eye-opener for me to say, you know, I need to knuckle down here, and my next opportunity I need to grab, because that was a kind of poor run of form that was disappointing.
You say there that you made mistakes. Do you think you just became a bit complacent because obviously you're playing for your country, you just had a solid season with Coventry? Do you think it was just complacency had set in?
I wouldn't say it was complacency. I think it was just, I felt like I'd go back to Newcastle and be involved and be close to playing for Newcastle. And when that didn't happen, I became a bit lost, and my focus went. I wasn't working as hard as I should have been. And as soon as you drop even 1% in football, then you pay the price for it. You have to be, like I said, 100% physically and mentally ready for whatever comes up. And when that Derby opportunity came up, I wasn't in that place and paid the price with poor performances on the pitch.
Can I ask a question just in terms of your agent, or what support is there for players who, like yourself, maybe at that moment in your career were maybe doubting yourself, or things aren't going as well as maybe they could have been? What support does your agent and the clubs give you?
Probably not enough. It's something I think, you know, individual coaching and training is vital in those moments, because being a manager and seeing, you know, how that side of it works, you're so focused on the next game and winning the next game that if somebody isn't doing well, then you can't give them the attention you need. You have to give the attention to the players that are going to help you win the game on the Saturday. And as much as, yeah, you need to get to him at some point, you know, that might be further down the line, and he needs you, you know, today. And at that moment, I think, you know, the support network you have round about you is vital. Obviously, your family and friends help, and your agent helps, but having that one-to-one coaching, I think, would be invaluable for players to get that support, because without doubt you need it throughout your career.
So Gary, we are now approaching your time at the end of Newcastle. How was it leaving such a big club and realising that wasn't going to be your club any longer?
It was disappointing not having played. Ultimately, I signed for Newcastle to play in the Premier League in England, and that I didn't achieve that. But like I said, I left having played over 100 league games. I probably had about 4 or 5 caps from my country at that point. I felt like I had a name within the game, that I could go to a club and rebuild my career and start somewhere else. So it was, I wouldn't say it was, I was devastated. I was obviously disappointed, but it was almost like a new beginning, and I had to rebuild my career somewhere else. And I was delighted to go back to Hibs, somewhere where I'd got on so well with everyone, enjoyed my time there. So I was delighted I got that chance to go back there and rebuild myself there.
And a successful time at Hibs as well. I think there was a League Cup, Scottish Cup final where you beat Rangers in the semi and Arteta missing a penalty. That must have been a pretty exciting time to be part of the club with competitions like that.
Yeah, we had a great group of young players there who all went on. Scott Brown's obviously still playing, Kevin Thompson, Gary O'Connor, Derek Reardon, Ian Murray. So it was a really good group of young players that Tony Mowbray managed to kind of put together. We had the experienced players of Stephen Glass, who I knew from Newcastle, Gary Smith, who'd been at Aberdeen. And it was a really good mix that, like I say, with Tony Mowbray coming into the job, a young manager with different ideas, we were a really exciting team to watch and had some relative success without actually winning a trophy.
You also got in the, I think I'm right in saying, the UEFA Cup, or was it the Europa Cup in your second season there?
Yeah, we finished third, which Celtic and Rangers were extremely strong there. So finishing third was almost winning the league for the other teams. And we managed to do that. Hearts were strong at the time. Aberdeen were really strong at the time. So it was a fantastic achievement to get into the Europa League, and to experience European football was another step in the ladder in terms of progressing everyone's career.
And I've got down here in your second season, or it might have been your first, I think it was second season, Hibs volunteered to play in the Intertoto Cup. What was the story behind that? I don't understand why it would have been a voluntary thing. Surely most clubs would have wanted to play in the Intertoto.
I can't remember the full details, but I remember the Intertoto was looked on as a negative competition, and nobody really wanted to be a part of it because you had to come in early for pre-season. But it gave you that opportunity to get into European football. But such a long time ago, I remember a few of the games that we played, and I remember coming back early. But for me, it was competitive football at a time when nobody else was playing, so it was a good chance for us to get up to speed quicker than the other teams.
Do you think that impacted the season when it got going? Did it affect your league form coming back so early?
No, I don't think it did. I think it gave us, impetus to start the season well, and allowed us to play competitive football when other people were maybe training or playing friendly games. So I think it was a good thing. And I think nowadays with Champions League qualifiers and other European qualifiers, and most teams are coming back earlier all the time. So looking back, it was something that has just become the norm now.
And sorry, I've lost my place on here. Yeah, so you signed a 2-year contract, and towards the end of your time at the club, I think you were starting to get a bit of stick off fans as rumours started to come about that you were possibly moving elsewhere. How was that? That must have been a difficult time.
Yeah, it was one game really in particular, Aberdeen at home. I had actually signed for Celtic a pre-contract on the Thursday, which Tony Mowbray knew about. I was always 100% honest with him. He was fantastic with me. I was the captain of the club. I felt it right to let him know everything that was happening. So he knew the initial contact for Celtic. They were allowed to speak to me. I had 6 months left in my contract, so they were well within their rights to speak to me. And every stage from there to me signing, he knew what was happening. And I remember phoning him on the Thursday and saying, look, I have signed a pre-contract. He said, look, I'm obviously disappointed for myself and Hibs. He said, but I'm delighted for you. You deserve it. How do you feel? Do you want to play on Saturday? Are you mentally right? I said 100%. I want to play. So that was it. We never discussed it again. And then on the Saturday, the first time I got the ball, the whole stadium started booing, all the home fans, because it had leaked out in the papers, and it was kind of common knowledge, and they started booing. And after about 10 minutes, I gave a short pass back away for a goal, which then the atmosphere got even worse. But then I got through it, and he was brilliant again after the game. He stuck up for me in the press and backed me 100%. And I played the rest of the season and finished the season off with Hibs. I had to play Celtic again as well, which was a bit strange, kind of coming up against a team you were going to be playing for the following season. But I think all those experiences only make you stronger. You have to, go through them and learn from them, and they only make you stronger. So I'm kind of glad I had that going into the environment that Celtic was. That was something that helped me probably going into that.
And as a player, would it be fair to say you're human and you do get affected by these things?
Yeah, I think you do. But if you want to be a footballer, or if you want to be kind of successful in anything in life, you have to be resilient. You have to be ready to deal with those moments. And like I said, once you get through those moments and you gain the experience from it, it only stands you in good stead for different experiences that you're going to have in the future.
And of course, as you touched on, all of this was preparing you for your move to Celtic. But there were some big local derbies in there as well during your time against Hearts. How was it playing in those games?
Yeah, I think every derby, I've played in the Hibs Hearts, obviously the Old Firm Celtic Rangers is a unique derby in my opinion, one of the best in the world, and an absolutely incredible atmosphere that the fans generate both at Celtic Park and at Ibrox. So really privileged to have been a part of those games and felt those emotions that go with those games.
And at Celtic, it was Gordon Strachan who signed you, another unbelievable manager to add to your list of unbelievable managers that you've worked with. So I heard a story about Gordon Strachan actually knocking round at your house to try and get you to sign Celtic. Are we allowed to talk about that?
Yeah, like I said, he was well within his rights, but he actually came with a little tammy on and was well kind of hidden, because he's obviously quite a famous face in Scotland and well known in Edinburgh in particular. And he came round. I lived in a flat just right in the centre of Edinburgh, and he came round and we had a cup of tea and a biscuit, and he just spoke about Celtic, the club. What he seen was my strengths and what I could bring to the team, and every kind of second I've had from that moment on with him has been an experience, a learning experience, and still to this day he's somebody I call for advice. He's a fantastic football man, and somebody that the kind of the experience we've had together at Celtic, I don't think either of us or anyone that was a part of that kind of era will ever forget, because they were fantastic times for the club.
And am I correct in saying that your first season at Celtic was hit and miss, for want of a better phrase? I apologise, because whilst the fans didn't take to you necessarily straight away, you played in some unbelievable Champions League games. You obviously played in, and you finally beat Rangers, for example, that season. So how was your first season at Celtic?
Yeah, my first season was, I started okay, lost a bit of form. It had been round about Christmas time, I think, or just before Christmas. I injured a player, David Fernandez, who played for Kilmarnock at the time. It was a bad tackle, but there was no kind of malice within the tackle. And he's somebody I actually see regularly at Man City games and chat to, but that affected me a lot. I became a bit cautious in how I was playing, and I made some mistakes.
That squad as well, you joined a very talented squad. I mean, I'm just going through Artur Boruc, Bobo Balde, Neil Lennon, Gravison, Presley, Petrov, Nakamura. There was some unbelievable talents. What was it like playing with those guys?
Yeah, it was a brilliant squad. Probably looking back at my career, it was the best squad I had been a part of. There was real competition. There was real competitive streak in every single one of us. Training every day was like a match day. It was like there was tackles, there'd be blood, there'd be cuts, there'd be fights. It was just so intense. And Gordon Strachan obviously created that and that environment for us to thrive. But there was a real squad there as well. You weren't guaranteed, nobody was guaranteed to play. So that created the competition within the training environment. And like I said, we achieved some brilliant things in terms of winning the domestic leagues and cups, but also to get back-to-back Champions League last 16s. It's not been done since, and dare I say, probably won't ever be done again. So that shows the level that we achieved really as a group of players.
I mean, we'll talk about the Champions League in a second, but I've just got to ask, players like Neil Lennon and Tommy Gravison, you must have a story from training, how those two could have trained together.
Yeah, like I said, it was, it was competitive. I've never, in fact, when I went to Wigan, the change environment, obviously Roberto Martinez, Spanish, the culture there was a lot of foreign players. And I remember my first day's training thinking, what have I signed for here? Because I had come from such an intense group of players who needed to win every single week to Wigan, which was it was foreign to me at the time. So yeah, it was just a pleasure to be a part of a group of players like that who wanted to win. Even the strikers like Jan Vennegoor Hesselink, Scott McDonald, Sean Maloney, Aidan McGeady, real quality players. But then you go through the team and you have like the Paul Hartleys, the Barry Hobsons, who probably a bit unnoticed, but that's what makes a team. Everybody is providing something different for the team. But what that squad had throughout it was winners. Everyone in that squad had a mentality and a drive that pushed it, that each other every single day to be better and to be winners.
And you talk about the Champions League. So just to put that into perspective, your first Champions League game is away at Manchester United, and the result was 3-2. But what a game. I mean, I will always remember it because I was in Liverpool watching it, and one of the most unbelievable free kicks I've ever seen. How was that game to play in, regardless of the result?
It was just brilliant atmosphere. Even I remember the Champions League, you travel down the day before and you train on the pitch the night before the game. So just training at Old Trafford the night before the game in anticipation of the game was brilliant. They had Louis Saha up front of the team, who was massively underrated as a footballer. Really, really dangerous, good footballer. Had everything. And they also obviously had other players round about him of extreme quality. But we actually took the lead twice in the game. Jan Vennegoor Hesselink scored, they equalised. Naka scored that wonderful free kick, they equalised. Then they scored right at the second half, and we actually held our own in the game and probably deserved more from the game. But what it was an eye-opener to the Champions League, that any little mistake at that level got punished severely. And that was the lessons that we had to learn quickly as a team, because in domestic games we could probably get away with things that at Champions League level you got punished.
And you obviously did learn those lessons, because that season in the Champions League, or the qualifying Group F, you actually went unbeaten at home.
Celtic always had a fantastic European home record, and the stadium on European nights just I don't know what happens to it, but it just the energy within the stadium. Every player, I think, can give that little bit more because of the support that you receive. I've even seen quotes from Messi and Seedorf that say it's the most unique stadium they've ever played in, and these guys have played all over the world. So it was incredible to experience that and to have that backing behind you. And I think it's a large reason why we won those games, because we were playing against such quality that we needed that little bit extra to help us win.
And I know you weren't, I believe you were injured at the time. I know you weren't in the first team, but did you manage to travel for the Milan game and obviously the famous Dida incident?
Yeah, we all went out to Milan for the last 16. I'd done my knee at that time, and we all went out, and we were so unlucky that night. Played extremely well and lost to a sensational Kaká goal in extra time, and that shows how close we were to getting to the quarter-finals of the Champions League, which when you say it now, a Scottish team that nearly gets there, it seems so far away, but the reality was then we were at that level competing with some of the best teams in the world.
And what was the dressing room like after the Dida incident? Because obviously it was a ridiculous situation.
Yeah, that night was just delirious to beat a team with Kaká, Maldini, Inzaghi, Pirlo. You know, the quality that Milan side had. And the way we beat them, we were a better team that night. We played extremely well. I remember it rained the whole game. The pitch was really wet. And it was just to beat that team in the last minute. And I think that it shows that, again, the level or the fine line between winning and losing, success and failure at that level. We scored last minute against Milan, last minute against Shakhtar Donetsk. Boruc did the penalty late on in the Man United game. So you need a lot of things to fall your way to get through those groups because of the standard that you're up against.
And I mean, regardless of the Champions League, you also won the league that season, and then the next season you obviously went on to play Champions League again, and you hit the nail on the head. You got to the last 16, and you then got to play against Messi and friends with Barcelona. How was that?
That was difficult. That would be the first word I would use. They were on a different level. They were just starting to get to the Guardiola team. It wasn't quite, Guardiola, but the Messi was growing up and starting to become, the player he is today. They still had a Ronaldinho who was not quite past his best. He was a little bit lazy, but he still had extreme quality on the ball. They had Xavi and Iniesta. They were just an unbelievable side. When they came to Celtic Park, they had something like 800 passes. And I've still got used to get a tactical kind of sheet from the game, and I've still kept it because even Gordon Strachan, he couldn't believe it after the game. He says there must be a misprint in here somewhere because that's impossible. But that just became the norm with that team because of the way they had been brought up and how to pass the ball and control the ball. And most of the time you were chasing shadows. They were an exceptional team.
How do you mark Messi? How do you do it?
Well, you struggle. He actually scored the second goal he scored that night. He drags it round me, and as he drags it, I'm trying to kind of put him off by dragging him to the ground with me without giving a penalty away. And he still manages to toe poke it in the goal. And it's just sometimes you've got to kind of applaud good play, and it's just he's done it his whole career against much better centre halves than me. And that shows, what a player he is. But my dad, I always remember my dad after those games. He was always very critical, but he would on the way in the car on the way home or the next day speaking to him, he'd say, "Oh, you could have done better here, or you could have done better there." And I'd be like, "Dad, it's Messi and it's Ronaldinho." Sometimes I think you just have to say it's unplayable. We cannot stop that. And even the third goal, I gave a pass away in midfield to Henry. And as he's running at me, he bends a shot from the corner of the box, that I think is definitely going wide. And as I turn, I can see it swerving, thinking, tell me that's not going in the top corner. And it's just like I said at the start, they punish every little mistake that in another game, the player runs it out the pitch or you tackle him and nothing comes of it. But at that level, top players punish you.
And that season, obviously, these type of experiences helped you because you've now become a solid centre-half Celtic, a bit of a cult hero in many aspects. And you've also then got 2008-2009 Player of the Season.
Yeah, I always think your kind of failures, you have to learn from them. And I've always been someone that I've made loads of mistakes in my career, and I always try to get better and try and learn from that and improve. And I think throughout my career I got better, and near the end at Wigan, when I was still fit and able, was my best years, because I had that experience behind me. I'd learned from mistakes that I'd made along the way, and as long as it doesn't kill you mentally and you become kind of consumed by it and it affects your confidence, I think you have to accept, look in the mirror and be honest with yourself at times and say, I've made a mistake, I have to improve. How are you going to improve? How are you going to work on these things to get better? But if you do that, then you can keep progressing and moving forward, which I felt like I've always done.
And one player as well that was in that team that I didn't ask about earlier, because he was signed after that first squad, was Brownie. I mean, you played with him earlier on in your career. He's just Celtic through and through. I think he's a bit of a nutter when you think about you've just had a team with Gravison and Lennon, and then you bring in Brownie. How was it playing with him again?
Brilliant. I played with Brownie at Hibs when he came through, and he was more of an attacking midfield player. Then when he first came to Celtic, he was a box-to-box midfielder. Now he's that holding midfield player. And again, he's somebody that has learned through his career and changed the way he plays the game because of that experience that he has now. And he's an absolute Celtic legend now, with the trophies that he's won, 9 in a row, going for 10 in a row as captain. He'll be remembered forevermore.
You won this league again in the 2000-2009 season. And Mowbray was in then. How was it seeing Mowbray again?
Yeah, when Tony Mowbray came to the club, I think it was a difficult time. That Gordon Strachan's team had probably not everyone had come to the end, but there was kind of surgery needed probably in the squad. Some people needed to go. The squad needed freshened up, and having been a manager myself now, I think sometimes you can get the right job at the wrong time, and that was probably the right job for Tony Mowbray, but he just got it at the wrong time and had a lot of difficult things to deal with within the squad, players leaving. I think by the January, about half the squad had left. Some probably that he wanted to go, others that he didn't. And then he was kind of left to try and pick up the pieces of that and couldn't manage to do it. But still a fantastic manager, still really enjoyed working with him in the 6 months that I had when he came to Celtic. I love his ideas on the game, the way he coaches and the way he gives you that kind of belief to go and play the style of football that I enjoy.
So, Gary, we're at the point now where your Celtic career is arguably coming to an end, and you talk about your relationship with Tony Mowbray. But as the career at Celtic came to an end, it was a bit of a, for want of a better phrase, an awkward time, because there was contract negotiations, and Mowbray was, from what I understand, quite abrupt in the contract negotiations.
No, he was fine actually. I just spoke to him last week. Had a good chat with him on the phone and discussed football, some players, different things at Blackburn, and he's still somebody I have great respect for. He was doing his job as a manager, as I now understand. I felt I was kind of worth more for Celtic, and they didn't, and that's football. And I love my time at Celtic. It's a fantastic football club, and I've been back many times since. And it really is a family. Everyone welcomes you back like you would kind of be welcomed back into your family. And it was time I had to move on and look for something different and another challenge. And that happens in football. And there's definitely no animosity between myself or Tony or the football club.
Fair play to you. And am I correct in saying, or is it just paper talk about the miraculous 20k was the figure that was involved or suggested, which in modern day terms is arguably nothing for a player of your ability playing in the top league?
I wouldn't say it's nothing for for a player of my standard, but I think that's paper talk. You know how they know the ins and outs. I think they're often wrong, but like I said, that in any negotiation, somebody has a value, and when that doesn't get met, then things you have to move on, and that was my kind of challenge to move on to something different.
Oh, fair play. I'd say nothing that makes it sound like I'm in the big bucks. I'm a teacher, and trust me, 20 grand a week would be cracking in my back pocket. So then you moved on to Wigan in 2010.
Yeah, I did. I was actually very close to signing for Middlesbrough with Gordon Strachan. I had done my medical. I had been with Gordon and his wife Leslie all weekend. We had discussed Middlesbrough, the club, the place, everything, and I was very close to signing. And then I remember I actually told Gordon I was, out of courtesy, Roberto Martinez wanted to speak to me, and out of courtesy I wanted to go and speak to him, but my heart was set on Middlesbrough, mainly because of Gordon Strachan and the respect and the relationship I had for him. Went to meet Roberto on the Sunday, really impressed by him, but still kind of drawn to Middlesbrough. And then, Wigan kept pushing and things changed. And then on the Tuesday morning, I ended up driving to Wigan, doing a medical at Wigan, and late Tuesday night signing for Wigan. And it's something I actually took into my management career, that whenever I got a player, I used to always say to the club secretary, you are not going home until this player gets signed. Because my medical finished at about 9 o'clock. I went back to the training ground. The club secretary wasn't there, couldn't sign the paperwork. And by the next day, I was my head had been turned and I was going to Wigan.
Wow. So how did Roberto Martinez go about turning your head? Was it a phone call very shortly afterwards?
Yeah, there was. I felt like the relationship I had with Gordon, I really felt wanted right from the very first minute. I knew what he was like as a person. I knew what he felt about me. And I didn't get that sense from Wigan early. They weren't very active and kind of trying to get the signing done. And then just over that weekend, after meeting Roberto, they became very active and trying to get the signature done, which made me feel like I was more wanted than I was originally. And that was the case. And having then got to Wigan and being a manager, I see why it took so long. Sometimes you're relying on other people to get deals done, and if they're not as proactive as you want them to be, it can give the player mixed signals. So in the end, I really felt wanted by Wigan, which proved to be the case. Roberto made me captain after 4 months at the club, and really put a lot of faith in me to be the leader in a Premier League club, which was something I always wanted to do. Having left Newcastle, not played a Premier League game, my aim in my career was always at some point to get back to the Premier League and try and be a regular player in what I felt was the best league in the world.
And what was the biggest change you noticed between moving from Celtic and the setup there to the setup at Wigan?
It was actually, at first I was worried because I went the first day's training. We actually trained at the stadium, and I'll never forget how kind of relaxed, how low tempo, no tackles. And I remember the first kind of game we got into a game situation, I went right through someone in one of my kind of hard, heavy-hitting tackles that the whole session kind of stopped and looked as if to say, like, what are you doing? And I very quickly realised I came from an environment where winning and the players' mentality to winning was every day we train at 100%, to a different mentality, a team that was obviously down the bottom of the league, a manager who had a different style of play, a different way of training, and I had to adapt to that. But I also felt one of the biggest reasons for Roberto signing me was to impose my, character and my leadership qualities on the team. So it was kind of a good mix that, I learned a lot from Roberto, but I could give a lot of that character and winning mentality that the team probably needed at that time.
Am I correct in saying Robbie used to get involved as well? Because I've seen some clips of him from when he was at Everton, and he's an unbelievable footballer.
He didn't when I signed. It must have been because of my tackles that he didn't get involved. But he did once we went to La Manga once, and he joined in a bit, but he didn't get involved regularly. He's a fantastic coach and an unbelievable football person. He sees the game from a real tactical point of view, and everything in the game, how you approach the game, there is a reason for it. And I learned so much being his captain. Every day I would have chats with him one-to-one and really learned a lot tactically and learned a lot about coaching during that period.
Sounds like a fair weather foreigner player when you say he only got his boots out in La Manga.
Yeah, he was. Well, it's funny actually. Graham Barrow, who was first team coach at the time and then became my assistant coach at Wigan and Chesterfield, Graham actually signed him from Spain. It was when Dave Whelan had opened shops and they were trying to. I think he was trying to move some of his shops into Spain, so they signed a few Spanish players to promote it. So Graham was told to go to Spain and sign these players, and he said that it was a massive culture shock for these three players to come to Wigan, but Roberto was the one that kind of stood out and was up for the challenge and wanted to learn. And he said technically he was very good, but maybe in the wind and rain in Wigan, that was when he probably struggled. So La Manga was probably why he got his boots on in the sun.
That first season was a 16th place finish. Not a bad start. What was the big difference you noticed in Premier League football to Scottish football?
The biggest difference, I think, in different levels of football is the quality and mistakes are punished more. At lower down, you can make mistakes and quite often not get punished. At Premier League level, every week you were coming up against one or two strikers of extreme quality that you knew that if you weren't on your game, they could really hurt you. Any mistake, they would hurt you. So it was that, week to week mentality of being ready to play. At Celtic, I had a kind of flavour of it with the Champions League and Old Firm games, but quite often at Celtic you dominated games and you were really in control of games. But when I went to the Premier League, every game was a battle, was a challenge, and that was what really attracted me to playing at that level.
And who were the standout performers in the squad when you first got there? Who sort of really caught your eye?
Yeah, we had some real talented players. Roberto was has always been very kind of open, wants to play football, play out for the back, control games. And we never, ever in my time went to Old Trafford or Stamford Bridge or the Emirates and shut up shop. We always went with a game plan to pass, to play, to obviously be compact when we lost the ball, to try and have a counter-attack threat. But we wanted to try and dominate possession, and quite often we did, to be fair, because of his tactical knowledge and the way he set the team up. We created overloads that could give teams problems, but we either lacked cutting edge at times or made too many mistakes defensively, and that cost us. But over time, we really became a team that I'm sure big teams didn't look forward to playing against because of the way we played.
Yeah, and I think you had a couple of relegation battles along the way, and it's probably fair to say 2011-12 season, to survive, you won 7 in the last 9, I think, beating Man U. And would it be fair to say you sort of attacked your way out of trouble?
Yeah, we did. That was, looking back now, my, kind of best period as a player, personally, and the team I was involved in. We were outstanding. We changed to 3-4-3 just before Christmas, and fair to say struggled in the beginning. I think a back three and a back four is, for me, the biggest tactical change that you can make as a coach or a manager. 4-4-2, 4-3-3, they're all very similar, but when you change to 3 at the back, the principles of, on the ball, off the ball, changed dramatically. And Roberto was brilliant at coaching that, but it took us a bit of time to implement that on the pitch. But once we got it right after Christmas, we beat Newcastle at home, who were going for Champions League. We beat Liverpool away. We beat Man United at home. We beat Arsenal away. We were dominating the top teams in the league and giving them real problems because of the way we played.
Do you think the relegation battle creates that extra focus? Is that what up the ante a bit?
I don't know why we always seem to gather momentum late in the season. I think the training we did, our pre-seasons were always, I wouldn't say easy, but they were low-key compared to what I'd been used to with Gordon Strachan, who kind of pushed you to the limits. And day one, you were flying. Roberto was very much a slow burner, where he wanted you to peak after Christmas. So to do that, you need to periodise the training through pre-season and build it up through the season. So I think physically we were always, fitter than the rest of the teams at that point of the season, in the sense that we weren't tired and we were still gaining in kind of energy levels and our fitness. But also I think, the relegation battle focuses the mind, and probably is why we got some kind of big results at a time in the season that we needed them.
And then, of course, moving into the 2013-14 season, famous season for many reasons, but really this was a time where injuries were starting to play a bigger part of your career. Was it a frustrating time not playing as often, especially when there's a great FA Cup run going on as well?
Yeah, it was really frustrating. I'd been at the club a long time and very much felt part of the club, but obviously not playing and contributing on the pitch. You feel like you're not doing everything you can. But in terms of my injuries, I'd done everything I possibly could. Probably now, as a 38-year-old, to kind of the aches and pains I wake up with every morning, probably done too much in terms of was taking injections to train, was taking 2 injections to play games, and really my hips were kind of, I was basically just kind of ruining my hips. And at 35, I needed a double hip replacement because of the toll I had put on my hips by training and playing and trying to contribute at that kind of level.
And although you weren't directly involved in as much of the FA Cup run as you would have liked, I'm guessing as a senior player in the dressing room, you were probably part of half-time talks and getting the guys going for games. Did you have any other roles in that build-up? Did you feel part of it?
Yeah, 100%. I was the club captain. I had a massive role in terms of the standards daily amongst the training ground, keeping the players focused. Like you say, half-time, full-time, giving advice or helping it as much as I possibly could. So, although I didn't play, I felt very much part of, the squad. And I think football, I had always been someone that fought for the squad in terms of, it's not just the 11 that play, it's everyone that's involved, because without the players working hard in training, without the players being there as subs and ready to kind of contribute when called upon, then you aren't going to be a team. So I very much felt part of the squad, and it was a real squad effort to try and stay in the league and obviously win the FA Cup. We've done one of them and just failed to stay in the league because of probably the toll of so many games and what it did to a small squad.
And of course, it was great that you could actually lift the trophy with Emerson Boyce at the end of it, to sort of acknowledge the influence you've perhaps had to that side over that period of time.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Emerson was a fantastic captain when he was called upon, and was captain for all of that FA Cup run. And it was Graham Jones, the assistant manager, who kind of put me to the front and said, make sure you go up with Emerson and lift this. You deserve it as club captain. And it was a fantastic day for the whole football club and the town. One that, although we did get relegated, I think most Wiganers and most of that squad and the staff would say you'd probably take that, to be remembered as the team that won the FA Cup will be remembered forevermore.
And it was at that time as well that Martinez went to Everton, and you obviously undertook some coaching roles. I've got to ask this question as an Evertonian, so I apologise. Were you part of the daylight robbery that charged Everton for Aruna Kone and Alcaraz?
Actually, I think Antolin Alcaraz was a very good player. Actually, I really enjoyed playing with him. Had a few injury problems, but on his day was an excellent footballer and really good 1v1 defender. Aruna, probably similar, had some injury problems with his knee, but tactically and the formations that we played at Wigan, he was excellent in the FA Cup run and done some good things. But sometimes football's strange, at different clubs. The pressure at Everton's different from Wigan, and you just maybe that you don't settle within the squad or different things. So it's very difficult to sign players and know that they're going to be successful when they two probably didn't have as much success at Everton as they did at Wigan.
No, I'm not expecting you to throw teammates under the bus there, by the way. But I was just astonished that however Wigan managed it, they managed to sell 2 players who were both injured when they came. I mean, I think Alcaraz was 6 months out when we signed him. Runa Kone was the same. I think he had 3 months out when we signed him. So you've either got the best doctor in the world at Wigan at that time, or we've got a dodgy transfer manager.
No, well, the doctor was brilliant. He kept me playing with his, I don't know what he was injecting into me, but it certainly took the pain away for 90 minutes. But James McCarthy was another one that they signed, who was a brilliant player for somebody so young, and his career has been blighted by injuries, but on his day as an outstanding midfield player. But that is the downside of football when you're injured. It's very often not the player's fault. It's just part and parcel of the game, and it can be a real, difficult time for players. Because I think 99.9% players I've played with have wanted to play and kind of show how good they are, but when you're injured, you can't do that.
And of course, we spoke about the relegation, and then this was the start of your. It was the end of your playing career and the start of your coaching career. Was it hard making that shift across? Was it kind of a move that you knowingly made, or did you sort of fall into it?
Yeah, I was always wanting to go into coaching. I had done my B licence when my hip needed my 3rd hip surgery. I needed that summer. I knew it wasn't the prognosis wasn't great, so I prolonged the hip surgery to go and do my A licence so I was kind of progressing my coaching career. Got the hip surgery, managed to get back to a level. I never felt at any point during the rehab that my hip was 100%, but I still managed to get back to a level to play. I played about, I think it was 5 games, but really did feel like I was on kind of one leg almost at times, because my left hip just, I couldn't do certain things. If the ball went in certain areas, I was really struggling, and that was difficult as a footballer who, I could do certain things before, and now because of the surgeries and the injuries taking their toll, I couldn't move the way I wanted to, and I was never the quickest anyway. So that made it really difficult, and I was thankful just to play the games I did and start getting some coaching opportunities as well.
And you became full-time manager. I think it was Uwe Rosler, and then Mackay was there for a short while. You became full-time manager April 2015, if I'm not mistaken, with 5 games to go.
Yeah, Uwe was fantastic for me as a kind of mentor. He got me involved when he came in. I was nearly coming back from my injury, but he wanted me to help during matches and analyse the game from the stand and report to him at half time. I would kind of watch training if I wasn't able to train and help with that. So he was brilliant in a sense of giving me that opportunity as a coach, and I'll always be thankful to him for that. And then when the opportunity came up to manage the club, we were effectively relegated. But I really felt like I understood the club. I knew what we needed to do to get back to being the Wigan that I knew. And I was really excited at the opportunity, even though I probably wasn't ready. I don't think you're ever ready to be a football manager. But I had great people round about me who could help me in the situation that we were in and progress the club forward again.
And I think you said the words that all fans and all chairmen wanted to hear as well, that regardless of the relegation, you promised them that you'd stay. And then I apologise in advance for the metaphor, but the next year for me was like I just started a game on Football Manager as Wigan. So basically, I'm a new manager, and the first thing I did was clear my squad out and bring a load of players in. I mean, I'm looking now at I think there was 25 players in over the season and 25 players out. That is Championship manager right there. You did an outstanding job with it. I'm just intrigued why so many ins and outs.
Well, it's a little bit unfair in terms of back then you could loan for a month or a few months. It wasn't the 6 month now window to window. You could loan out with the window. So some of them were loans, like John Joe Kenny from Everton. We had for, I think it was 2 months, and he was very young, and he was kind of, by the second month he was physically tiring. So then he went back to Everton. We had Junior from Everton as well, who was only there for, I think it was 4 months. So some of them were Francisco Junior, yeah. Some of them were loans. But the big thing that we had as a club that had actually started in the January under Malky Mackay was we were reducing the wage bill. From the January that started, Sean Maloney left, Ben Watson left. So they were starting to reduce the wage bill in January because in case the relegation happened. And then that was carried on in that summer as well. So a lot of them were forced upon me as well to get them out the club to reduce the wage bill, which in hindsight, it was something that actually helped me because a lot of these players were my teammates and kind of knew me as a player, as a teammate. But the club kind of needing to let them go to get them off the wage bill, it allowed me to start as a manager on a clean slate. And I think we only had 4 players who I'd played with, as a player, were still in the squad by the end of that season. And it really felt like a new club and a new beginning. And I must admit, it was a fantastic group of players that they effectively won 2 League One titles because they won it, got relegated the following year and won it again with a similar squad. So a fantastic group of players, great guys who kind of worked hard and had a great spirit about them and really loved managing that team. And
just going back to my earlier metaphor, this is where it's different between yourself and myself. On my Football Manager, I wouldn't have won the league, but you obviously got them promoted and you signed players like Will Grigg, 25 goals that season. What a player.
Yeah, we signed a lot of good players. Like I said, it was a brilliant squad and it wasn't easy. Even though we had a big budget, we could sign the players. To change that many players, you have to get them playing together. You have to find a system that suits everyone. Will Grigg was the biggest conundrum within that and how we get the best out of him to score goals. And it took us till just before Christmas, early December, we went away to Barnsley and changed our shape. We played with 2 number 10s behind Will Grigg. We kept playing him with a strike partner, but we changed that day to 3-4-2-1 with 2 number 10s in behind him. We won 2-0 and we took off from there. I think we went 22 games unbeaten. His goal ratio went through the roof and we went on to win the league fairly convincingly in the end because at that point we were still like 5th or 6th in the league and struggling to find the system that suited this new group of players.
But I think you're doing yourself an injustice there because you're saying the players played well. But as a manager, your first management experience, you obviously got promoted. You were voted Manager of the Year. It was absolutely outstanding. You must have been walking on air. And then come I think it was October the next year in the new division, you get dismissed. I mean, what's that all about? This is one thing that irritates me about football.
Welcome to football management, I think, was the the kind of message there. I think the chairman spoke about this at Wigan after, and there's loads of things going on at a football club that behind the scenes and different things, and I felt as a club were moving in the right direction. We weren't, getting the results we wanted. We hadn't lost a game by more than one goal. Of my last 5 games, we lost 2, drew 2, and won 1. So it wasn't horrific form, but we weren't on a terrible run. And one of the games, my last game was actually against Brighton, who got promoted that year under Chris Hughton. We played extremely well, lost to a late goal. I can't remember the midfielder's name, but scored a wonder goal. So it was. We were basically finding out the fine margins of football at the levels you go up, and the mistakes that we probably made the previous season that we wouldn't have got punished for. The Championship was punishing us, and we were trying to get to grips with that as a team. Plus, we had signed new players. Dan Byrne, who was a fantastic signing on a free transfer, who's now playing magnificent for Brighton. We signed Nick Powell, who came in from Man United, came in a bit later, so was getting up to speed, wasn't fully fit, and he actually finished that season on fire, scoring goals for fun. So there was a lot of different things, but it was disappointing in a sense that I still felt that we were building and going in the right direction in terms of what we were as a football club.
Well, I think he deserved longer, and I think all the fans think he deserved longer, and it's just one of the horrible natures. I mean, you talked there about the chairman. I think a lot of it's financial as well, isn't it?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me, and I mean, I seen it today. Jonathan Woodgate got sacked, and I think when clubs do it, it's the lack of planning, it's the lack of strategy of what is going to be better than what they've got. I understand that sometimes people need to lose their job, managers need to lose their job, and the clubs need to change direction. But when clubs do it, they do it with no plan. They do it with, a kind of sense of panic, and then what are we going to do now? And that's what really disappoints me. If they had a plan, they had a strategy, then I understand it. If they say, we're not going this way, we're now going to go in this direction. But very often it's panic. Then they don't get a manager in for a number of weeks. Then the team's in that transition phase. And I think, clubs would be much better having a longer term strategy. And Brighton would be a club that I look at now with a technical director, a plan in place to say, we want to play this type of football to achieve these type of results. And they've kind of had a season where they started really well. They're now drifting to the bottom. They won't sack their manager because they believe in what they're doing and they have a process in trying to achieve that. Norwich would be another team that do that. Burnley would be a team that when Sean Dyche was there and they got relegated the first time, they didn't sack the manager because they fully believed in the plan that he had in place for the football club. And it just so happens they come back up, they have a sustained period of success in the Premier League. So I think most clubs that have structure, have a plan, have, funnily enough, had success. Bournemouth would be another club that have done that. So that's my kind of disappointment or to managers losing their job.
And you talk about structure and these things. You then moved on to Chesterfield. How did Chesterfield sell you that position?
Hindsight's a brilliant thing in football and life. It's a fantastic thing. But Chris Turner was at Chesterfield at that point as the general manager. I'd met Chris at a few games and we'd played against him. I really liked him as a guy. I really liked him as a football person. And, having him there to help me, because I felt my strengths were coaching and being on the grass and preparing players to play. He was going to help in the management side and recruiting players and different things. We had Ched Evans, who was a fantastic striker, could score goals at that level. We had Jay O'Shea, who was a fantastic number 10, and Bolly Aribe, who was a brilliant winger. 2 weeks into the job, Jay O'Shea was sold, Bolly Aribe was sold, Chris Turner had left his post, and Ched Evans was injured. And all the positives that I was telling people, this is why I'm going to take this job, this is why I believe, they weren't there anymore. And we really struggled as a football club. And the football club has continued to struggle since. So hindsight's a brilliant thing. And it was a lesson that I learned, that to really assess the club you're going into and be aware of all the potential pitfalls. And I definitely learned a lot in that period.
And then after that, you moved on to Partick Thistle. I think that was 2018-19 season. Is that correct?
Yes, it was, yeah. I took over in the 2018, yeah. Just they had been relegated the previous season. They had a new chairman, Jackie Lowe, who was a woman who, I must say, she was absolutely brilliant. And everyone on the board at that club were amazing. I went into something that, again, was difficult in a sense that the team was losing games. The team had been losing games for a number of kind of months in the previous season. And I actually only won one in my first 10 games and was really kind of under pressure early in the club in terms of the board. The chairman, Jerry Britton, the chief exec, were amazing in their support of me and sticking to the plan that I was given to them. We had a fantastic January in terms of recruitment because we had a plan. We stuck to that plan. We signed experienced players, which we felt, myself and Brian Kerr, my assistant manager, we needed to get us out the situation we were in. And we got out, again, it wasn't the last day of the season, but finished sixth in the end, so fairly comfortably in the end. And then had a summer where we wanted to rebuild the football club and sign younger players, change the dynamic of the squad. And ultimately the board changed and different things happened behind the scenes that was out with my control or anyone's control, and things changed, and ultimately the manager pays the price.
And for those who are listening who don't know the story as well, I think at the time, God rest his soul, Colin Weir, the Euro Millions winner, invested heavily into the club as well.
Yeah, he did. Colin was an amazing man. What he did for that club, what he did for so many different charities and people in Scotland with the money that he won was fantastic. And he was an amazing man who just wanted the best for the football club. And when the boardroom changed and the infighting kind of affected the club, he pulled his money out at that time because he felt, the club wasn't going in the right direction as well. So it became quite ugly for a number of months over the summer.
And this unrest, that was in 1920 as well. Am I correct in saying that was one of the things that maybe acted as a catalyst towards you being terminated in that season when you were bottom two? Was it just the turmoil around the club?
Yeah, without a doubt. There was a number of different things that was going on. We had actually started really well in the cup competition and beat Ross County, who were in the Premier League, and had a tie against Celtic to look forward to. Our league form wasn't great. We'd lost 3 of the first 5 and drew the other 2, so we hadn't got off to the start in the league that we wanted. But I don't know why, but whenever there's unrest or whenever there's that feeling in a club that everyone's not pulling in the same direction, it somehow affects results, and I don't think it should. And we try and we all say the right things and say, it won't affect results. We're putting it to the back of our mind that it somehow does, and I didn't think that helped us.
And am I correct in saying during this time, despite everything that was going on, you also applied for the Scotland manager's position?
No, that was actually just before I got the Partick Thistle job. I didn't actually apply. I had spoke to Stuart Regan about it, and just really wanted to. I felt like I could help, whether it be in a coaching role or whether it be as the manager. I felt like I could help the country when, you know, nobody really wanted the job. It was a job that nobody wanted, and I felt like international football would probably suit me as a manager. And I understood, having played 55 times for Scotland, I understood what it kind of needed for the country to be successful.
And I've got to ask you, and I apologise again, but I've got to ask you, because I apologise, I'm going to read the quote. There's a brilliant quote talking about management where you've said, I've only had one full season as a manager where I started and finished it and I won the league. Every other time I've been sacked. Is this just the nature of football management?
Yeah, I think so. Ultimately, like I said before, it's about the plan, the strategy. There's no manager in the world can guarantee results. You know, even Jurgen Klopp, Pep Guardiola, Jose Mourinho, they cannot guarantee results. What they can guarantee is, you know, a plan, a methodology of how they're going to coach and produce a team. They're also very lucky that they can spend millions of pounds on brilliant players that ultimately help. And I've heard it so many times from great managers that say, you know, if you want to be a great manager, get great players, because it does make it easier. But I think, you know, in my experiences so far as a manager, it's when everyone's pulling in the same direction, when there's a clear strategy from the chairman or the owner right through the club, then that's when you get success. And I had that with David Sharp at Wigan, where we were all on the same page. We understood what we wanted to achieve. We understood what style of football we wanted to play. We recruited players to fit into that style of football. We then, as a coaching staff, had to coach very, very well for a number of months, because it didn't just happen overnight. And once it happened, it was a brilliant thing to watch and be a part of, because it then becomes regular, it becomes consistent in terms of performance and results. But unless you give it that time, unless you put some money towards it, then it's very difficult.
So, Gary, the next question is quite obviously you've got a lot to offer the game. What is next for you, and where do you see yourself moving next in your career?
Well, I'd love to get another season as a manager and see if I could win a league again. would be a great. But I think just now I'm working with players, professional players at different levels, and helping them individually. I believe that to be a footballer, you need a lot of help. You need support, and I believe that I have a unique skill set, having been a player, coach, and manager, where I can help players fulfil their potential and achieve, you know, great things. And I've been enjoying that at the minute. I'm enjoying coaching younger players, like grassroots level, and kids to, again, you know, you see passionate young players, give them the knowledge that they need, give them help and support to develop and become the best that they can be. So I'm enjoying that, but I'd be lying if I said that one day I wouldn't want to be a manager again and have a go at it, because I believe, you know, the experience I had at Wigan, the other two experiences, whilst bad, have made me a better manager. But I believe I can do the job and would like an opportunity again.
Yeah, well, I for one really hope you do get placed back in the manager's hot seat, and I wish you all the best with that. And it seems a good point to thank you very much for your time and wrap the interview up. So thank you very much. It's been great catching up with you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, lads. Anytime.